Hey all, my name is André Forni. I'm game artist here at Supercell, and I'm here today so we can talk a little bit about like some process you can go through to try to create some I don't know, original, some unique works. This is always a challenge for us artists, so I'm gonna share a little bit of how I go through it. Maybe it will help you in a way. But before I talk about this, I just wanna tell a little bit about myself so you know where all of this is kind of coming from. So before working on the game industry, I was actually working on the animation industry. I've worked in animation for 15 years. I started as a character animator, then I slowly start transition into like concept art and art direction. And then because I was doing all of this in Brazil and the industry there is very small, we end up like wearing like many hats. So then I start directing, and then I end up directing some TV series for Disney, then Nickelodeon, and also like one or other project that end up being on Netflix. And it's been like a great journey, but I've always been a gamer at heart. I played a lot of games, maybe too much games. So when I got the chance to transition into the game industry, I really got excited about it, and I've been doing it for the past like 5 years. What I'm gonna talk a little bit today is about like during all this time I've been trying to come up with a way to really how can we create something that feels like unique and new on this world that's like there's so many games and movies coming up. So I have this kind of like 5 steps I go through to try to create something that I feel is unique in a way because it has something to do with my experience and what we are working on. So I want to go towards like this 5 steps toward creativity. It sounds like a clickbait name, but it's actually more or less what I normally do for every task I have, and I have to kind of like be creative on those. So during all this time, I've been trying to learn from a lot of people from events like this, and I've end up having like these 5 steps that I go through. So the first one is like, what's the most important thing to present? And this sounds very basic, but it's actually something that, you know, when we are rushing on the daily job, sometimes we just want to jump in and start producing stuff. So really stopping and giving some time to really think like, what's the most important thing I need to present? Why am I gonna do this that I'm about to do? The second thing is the context. So all those projects like animation and games, they are all like very collaborative projects. So you have a lot of people work on them. They normally are very complex. There's a lot of like stuff going on. So it's always good for you to know what's the context, what's happening around what you're gonna create and what you were doing like right now. And then the third stuff is like, how can I make it personal? And this is something that I feel is precisely what will be kind of like the fingerprint that every artist has, like why this thing can be different just because it's you that is actually doing it. Like, so this is one of the key points for me. It's like, how can you make this personal too? Like, it will still fit the game or the animation, but will also feels very personal and relatable. And then we do the research, and then the research normally can be very basic, just like doing a Google image search or whatever. But I do think that the more time you spend doing the research, the better the outcome is going to be. And especially if you get the time to really read something about it or visit something that has this, like if you're doing like a animal themed work, if you can go to a zoo, or if you can watch something about like how that animal behaves and why it behaves this way, those kind of researches always bring some awesome stuff, more than just like looking for the image and finding like how the stuff look or something like that. And then after you go through all of this, then it's the 5th step, and then you actually produce, and you start producing it. And I know it can look quite like far from, you know, you get the job and then you have to make something, so you have to go through all of this to finally start producing. But from my experience, whenever you go through all those 4 steps before producing, it actually makes your production much more precise, and then you feel that like you don't need to go through as many mistakes that you would go if you were just, you get a job and you start producing and doing, like, I don't know, sketches or stuff like that. So this is kind of like the 5 steps I go in. Like, what's the most important thing to present? What is the context? Can you make it personal? Research, and then produce. So it always makes much easier if there's like examples of that. That's always how I like to learn, like if people give me some examples or show how this is actually working. So I'm gonna go through some of the projects I worked on and how I applied those 5 steps. Unfortunately, I cannot show what I'm working right now at Supercell. It's a game that we are under development, so maybe in the future. But right now, I'm gonna show some of the other projects I've been working on. So I thought about starting with Zuba. So Zuba is this like mobile game that I developed at Wildlife Studios, and it's the game about like it's a battle royale mixed with a little bit of like MOBAs. So kind of like if you take the idea of the battle royale games where the arena starts shrinking, and I also have like the characters have their own unique features, like skills, like, I don't know, League of Legends or Dota or some of those games. When I joined this project, the project already has been kind of like conceived. Like there was a lot of stuff to figure out, but the main idea of the game was already there. Like the team was already excited about like the main concepts. But on the art side, it was still very open. The only thing that people were kind of like pushing for was like this animal theme. Like they wanted the characters to be some animals. So how should I start? How should I approach this project that I just landed? And that's where, like, again, you go through these 5 steps. That's what been helping me for like since I start like using this as a workflow. It has been helping me a lot. So the first thing was to ask myself, so what's the most important thing to present with like this game? Because I was in the art direction of the game, so everything that's like visual about the game, it was kind of like my responsibility. And I said like, okay, what's the most important thing that the art for this game needs to present? And so one thing is that the game is very action-packed, like so you have a lot of movements happening, a lot of stuff going on, and all of that on a small screen. So the first thing was like, well, we need to make this clear enough so it reads on a mobile phone. And also, like, there's a lot of this is a very competitive game, so there's a lot of stuff that you need to be able to read and to kind of like understand, so when you are playing you can make the right decisions. And then we also have to know, like, so what's more important to show during the gameplay, and all of that was really one of the steps that we were trying to do. And then we were also like, how can we make and this is something that it's always something that we always strive for, is like, if I take a look at this screenshot of this game, how can I make this that people will recognize it? Like say, oh, okay, just by this image, I can know what this game is. So we wanted that, hey, looking at this one image from Zuba, we go say, okay, cool, this is Zuba. So this was kind of like, I felt was like the most important thing to do regarding the art direction of the game. And then we get into the context. When we were developing Zuba, there was this boom of all the battle royale. So there was like many games being released, and also the company was learning to do this type of game at the same time. So there was a lot of challenges going on. And the first thing I thought for the art side was, hey, I want art to be helping this game stand out, but also not making it very complex. So I had this feeling like, let's try to make it as simple as we can, but still very recognizable. So this was kind of like everything that was going around. And also, again, we were working on a team, and the idea of animals were like already going around. And I said like, well, let's maybe try to go with that. Like if it doesn't work, we change. But if it works, it would be awesome, because the team's already pretty excited about it. This was kind of like the context. And then how can I connect to this personally? And that's the part that when I joined the project, there was the initial prototype had a lot of like violence and blood and stuff like that. And maybe because I've spending like 15 years in animation and mostly was like children animation, I feel I have all this kind of like adversity towards like too much like gore and blood and all of that. So I said, can we make it still very entertaining, but without all the violence and stuff? Can we make it more like friendly in a way that like you like the characters and you don't you know, we can get this kind of like maybe this like Looney Tune violence that's like fun, but you know that the characters, they don't actually die, maybe they are just like hurt in a way but not really hurt. So was kind of like how I would like to connect to the project, is by doing this kind of like different take on that. And then there was the research. The team had this idea of being in a zoo. Then there was a lot of cool research to be done and a lot of like documentaries about like the animals and all of that. So it was really an amazing experience. So really spend some time on research. It's always time well spent. And then I started producing some of the artwork that I'm gonna show you. So the first thing I would like to go to try to get all those 5 items and put them, like to present this to the team, is to make this one image that kind of captures it all. And so every time I get into the project, I try to get to this point where we can show this one image that will, you know, be trying to translate all of this into from words to image. So I made this one image that's like the first pass that was like, you know, I want to have humor. I want to have like this funny violence in a way, but I want the game to be approachable because we also wanted to reach like the maximum amount of people we can, like a very broad audience. So I made this image and I showed it to the team and to get like the reaction from them, and it was really fun. Everybody got excited about the idea. There were a lot of good feedbacks and like things we could improve on. And having this like gone through all those steps really paid off, because every time somebody questioned me about like, why are you doing this or why are you doing this, I knew why I was doing it. And if they had some kind of feedback or something that they would like to discuss, we already had this kind of like starting point where we could like go over it and start discussing it. So maybe I went a little bit too far on the simplification side. So like as you can see, the character, it was really mostly like a box with eyes. But because I really wanted the character to be like readable from afar, like the camera from our game was quite far, and again on a mobile screen, it's always a little bit of a challenge. Then I said, hey, let's go the most simplistic we can, and then it's always easier to add details than to reduce details once we get there. So the team was all excited about where we were going, and then I always want to kind of like reduce the bridge between like a concept and actually how can this look like as a final. So I like to create those kind of images, like this splash screen of how the game could look like or something like this. So I also made one of this for the teams to see if the team gets like, hey, this is the right energy that we want to go for. And so with that defined, it was, okay, we have the kind of like the overall direction of the art of the game, kind of like we know where we are heading to, not exactly how it's going to look, but more like the direction. I use the 5 steps on the art direction, so it's this really like major thing. And then I also use the 5 steps in everything else I do. So let's see how I do it with when it's regarding like one of the characters. So the game again is about this battle royale, and you have the characters, and every character has this like unique skill. So we had like the fox. The fox is the fast one, but she also has like low health. And then we have the gorilla that's really like, he is very slow, but he has like a lot of health. And then one of the characters that we had that we always loved the idea was the shark. When I got to the moment to really like to make the shark, I was like, ooh, shark is hard because there are so many shark characters, and it's really hard to be kind of like, how can we create this kind of unique shark? And I think this is always like a goal to strive for. Like, I don't think everything you do for a game needs to be unique, but at least some part of it would be good, that, you know, you can make it in a way that like it feels fresh. Again, I went through the 5 steps because sometimes I just want to start producing it, but every time I stop and I think about the 5-step, it's the best. So again, what's the most important thing to present? So this was like a very dangerous character. Like it's in games we call the glass cannon. So it like has a lot of damage but dies very easily. Not sure if sharks die easily, but like that was kind of like the what we should portray for the player. So it should be a character that like people when they saw him they would be scared of getting close to him. So that was kind of like the main thing. The context on this situation is like, again, he needs to be really readable compared to all the other characters, and he is this character that's like hard for you to control a little bit. There's a lot of damage. So again, I got informed about everything I need to know about it. And then how can I make it personal? And this is the part where like I didn't want it to make the shark be kind of like the kind of like cliche of the killer shark, the shark that's like the evil. I know it's the one that is killing everybody. So I start thinking about like, okay, so this is a shark that lives in a zoo. What if it's the only shark from the zoo and he's living on this tank? Like they got him really small and they put on the tank, and the only thing the shark sees is the people that comes to the aquarium, and the only other animal he sees apart from humans are dogs. And I say, what if like because he doesn't see anything else, you know, he has a lot of thieves, the dogs have a lot of thieves, he kind of like can recognize himself on the dogs, and then maybe we can make him behave a little bit like a dog. So that was kind of like where we start. So the first image I draw about Finn, that was the name of the shark, was him playing with a bomb as if it was like a ball, like if it was a dog playing with the ball. And then the team instantly loved it, like, oh yeah, that's so funny, I can already see how it goes and all of that. And then it was kind of like this funny moment where like, you know, it's a shark trying to play with you like he was a dog, but once he bites you, you like, I don't know, you lose an arm. So that was kind of like the joke we were always telling. And it's always good to see that when you just give an idea or you show something and people can, you know, start building up on this. So we felt, okay, we had it. Because I went through this step, I think we got to a place where it was much more original than I would be if I have not followed those 5 steps. And then it was just a matter of like keep, you know, repeating this for all the characters, and it was always a very nice challenge. So, okay, if we have a flamingo character, who is this character? Why he does what he does? Or about the bat, how can we make the bat feels unique? So we went through all those 5 questions for all the characters. Sometimes we keep closer to the cliche because it was necessary, you know, like it's if you put a gorilla in a game, sometimes it's cool that you go for the full, like, you know, I'm a Hulk, I'm this big character that like I have a lot of health, but sometimes you can try to avoid the cliche, and then those 5 steps can be really useful. So we went through all of this with the characters, and then there was the environment. So how can we also be using those 5 steps on the environment? And the only thing I knew by them is that, hey, we want to make it in a zoo. But I was like, at least the zoo where I'm coming from, they are quite a little bit boring and a little bit sad in a way. They know a lot of like fences and stuff like this. So I said, oh, let's do some research on places where, like, you know, there's better and zoos and all of that. And again, what's the most important thing to do is to make this arena. And on the gameplay side, we really wanted the arena to have different play styles. So for example, they wanted this place where the characters that are like that they can shoot far have an advantage, but also there's this other area where the characters that are more like on the close combat, they are better there. So how can we design a map that looks good but also helps the gameplay? And this is always the thing you have to have in mind. Like, gameplay is king. In animation we used to say story is king, but on games, gameplay is king. So then we start like really thinking about like, okay, what if each area that we have for the gameplay is also kind of like this small biome? So maybe the area where the characters fight in close combat could be like the savannah, and then the area that's very open could be kind of like, I don't know, the polar area. And maybe this area that's kind of like full of places to hide is like the forest. And we just keep like playing with those ideas, and everybody started liking it a lot. And we got to this point where it feels like this is like this theme park, you know, like those like when you look at those like Walt Disney parks or those thematic parks, they always have this very cool map with different colors and all of that. We say, hey, maybe we could do something like this. We have different colors for each area. Each area is where one of the animals come from, and then we can make different gameplays for each one of those areas. And that was really how it all started. And then it was just a matter of like finding a cool style and also trying to design it. But also there was this one thing that people was like, but why are animals like loose in the zoo? So we made the map has some like signs of like that, like the animals got loose, you know, there's some issue going on with, I don't know, the electricity or something with the fences, and then the animals got loose. So we have like elements on the environment that also tells that this just happened, like the animals just got loose, that's why there's no more people, they all went running away, and now it's just the animals and the guards trying to figure out what to do next. So again, we are always trying to understand what are the things we have to portray, how to connect to them, and also how to, be able to create this in a way that it looks good, solves gameplay, and also, if we can, make it quite unique. So let me show another example, and this one from the animation industry. So in 2011, I got the chance to moved to Canada to work in a project there, and it was a project about the Inuits. Being a Brazilian, I had zero experience with the snow, much less with the Inuits culture and all of that. So when I got there, I started studying and learning more about like everything that is going on there, especially like the culture and how they live, and I started being amazed about how rich like the North Pole is. And when, again, being a Brazilian, the image I had about the North Pole is that like what is like bare ice where there's no life and anything like that. But then during my research, I learned about like the Inuits, the animals that live there, how the plants and how the fauna and the flora, all of this lives there, and I got really excited about it. I thought about, hey, why don't we make this TV series about it, like to teach kids about this part of the world that I feel is as magical as is, I don't know, Harry Potter. Like for me, it is as crazy as like, how can this animal that has like this bone that go through like the narwhal, like for me it's a mystical creature. And then I started developing this TV series that was about like the North Pole. And then when I went to present it for the first time, the first question somebody asked me was why I'm listening to a Brazilian presenting a TV series about the North Pole. and then I thought that this was really like, if we go through the 5 items, this is the third one being kind of like very present. Like, how can I connect this on a personal level? And this is like, if I was a kid, I would like to be watching this TV series and learn about this, because I had no idea about how deep and how rich this universe is. So what if we can tell this to the other people? And so even when I start presenting this TV series, I always had this slide like, hey, this is how I thought the North Pole is, and this is how it actually is. And I think that many people in the world doesn't know that, so we should tell them. And that's kind of like became the pitch of this TV series, and all the artwork we made, the characters, the environment was always like, so what's the most important thing to do is to present the North Pole, the Arctic, for people that doesn't know it. And then again, what's the context? Well, it's kids. How can we make in a way that's like interesting? How can we make in a way that we are actually showing real stuff that they can learn from? And then how can I connect to this personally? And then, for example, on the environments, I really wanted it to be as impressive as the reality is. But as we are doing like an animation, I didn't want to go for realism. And so, hey, how can we make this a bit more like colorful and playful in a way that like it's still approachable and fantastic as the reality, but we have this other way to connect with people. Again, in this project, I went through all those 5 steps just to create this pitch and to be able to have this project being presented to many companies and all of that. So let me show you another example in a more like dark universe, because everything I show is a little bit more on the, colorful side. So I was to develop this like druid characters in this very like dark universe. And again, going through those 5 steps were really, really useful, because the first thing I know I didn't want to do was to create this like, the cliche of the druid that's like, the tree hugger, or the one that's like always loving the animals and all of that. I wanted this to be more like the nature fury druid, the one that you would be scared of, a druid that could be on one of those dark worlds, like, I don't know, The Witcher or something like this. So I went through all those 5 steps, and the most important thing was like, Ray, I want people to know that this is a character that, like, if you mess up with nature, it's gonna catch you. And then the context was, again, this world is a very dark world, so we could go very deep and very scary. And how can I connect personally was, I'm really always thinking that, hey, we should treat nature with respect or it will bite us in the butt. And I thought maybe this is the bite. This character is the one that's coming back towards us, the payback from the nature. I did some research, and then I started developing the sketches with those focus. And some ideas started coming up. So what if the character, instead of seeing like through her eyes, she actually sees through the animal's eyes, and that's how she kind of like see the wrong stuff going on the forest. So she has this kind of like this ominous presence, and this can be very scary, like you're doing something wrong and then you see that, like, I don't know, a bird is watching you, and then you go like, oh no, she saw it. And then this was kind of like the trigger. And that's why I come up with all those studies, and eventually I stuck with this design that is like this blind druid that is not actually blind, but she's seeing through the eyes of all the animals, and that's how she controls, everything that's going around, and that's how she appears and, I don't know, avenged whoever is disturbing nature. So again, the 5 steps really helping out, and it doesn't matter if it's like a more dark universe, if it's a very funny, childish. Those 5 steps, they are really just like kind of like this way to help you navigate through all the questions you have, but you can actually get some cool answers just by going through them. So another example I'm gonna show, it's a really quick one, but again, I think that the more examples you show on those 5 steps, the better. So for this one is sometimes you just have to find a twist. Like not everything you're creating needs to be very original. Sometimes it can just be a little twist. So this was an animation project where we had to do this different twist on the Red Hood fairy tale. And instead of going for something very childish, we could target a different audience. So we went for something a little bit more towards like the young adults or something like this. And again, we went through the 5 stages with the team. We aligned, and we started creating those concepts where like, hey, what if the Red Hood was actually like this fox, and she's very fast, and she has to take like this one thing towards the heart of the forest. That would be kind of like the grandma. And there is the creatures that would be kind of the wolf, but they are kind of like more like the darkness that is trying to, engulf the forest. And so we went through all of those ideas before starting producing anything. And then when we had all of this, we just come up with a few concepts, like those 3 images I'm showing, and it was enough to present this idea to the people that were kind of like trying to come up with this show, and they loved it. It was really cool. And it was funny because it was a presentation that people were expecting a lot more images, but because we had all those things thought off because of those 5 steps, I could only show like those 3 images and talk a lot about this, and they could say, yeah, that's perfect. That's where we are going for. So I think this is like kind of like what I'm talking about. Like those 5 steps, again, for me, they are really helpful. And I've learned them by watching a lot of people talk about their own process. And that's why I'm here today, because I think it's me trying to give back, because a lot of the stuff that I do and a lot of the stuff I achieved is because of the stuff that I learned from conversations and talks and lectures like this. And if it helps you, even if a little bit, that's great. And that's why I think all those events and all this, this artist community is so great. So thank you for the attention. And I hope to see all the amazing universes, characters, and worlds you're going to create on games and movies and all of that. Yeah. Thank you. Bye-bye.